"Ma'am, step back, or we'll remove you by force." The entire terminal froze as two security officers closed in on Dr. Evelyn Reed, calm, composed, and guilty of nothing but asking a question. With a lie from a prejudiced gate agent fueling them, the officers yanked her arms, hauled her across the polished floor, and treated her like a criminal, while stunned passengers watched in horror. But while they dragged her, assuming she was powerless, Evelyn's badge slipped loose from her blazer, the unmistakable gold of the FBI. In seconds, the hunters were about to learn they had just assaulted a federal agent on an active covert operation. The air in Hudson Walker International Airport's Terminal C was thick with the familiar sense of stale Cinnabon jet fuel and the faint acidic tang of industrial disinfectant. It was 3:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the terminal was a frantic river of humanity, all flowing toward different destinations, all trapped in the same anxious current. Dr. Evelyn Reed sat near Gate C-27, absorbed in a dog-eared copy of The Behavior of Crowds. To anyone watching, she was just another traveler. She wore dark wash jeans, a simple grey t-shirt, a well-tailored navy blue blazer, and comfortable black loafers. Her hair was pulled back into a neat, practical bun. She could have been a professor, a consultant, or just someone heading home. This anonymity was her shield and her greatest tool. Evelyn wasn't just a doctor of philosophy. She was a senior special agent with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, holding a PhD in forensic psychology. She wasn't just reading a book. She was scanning the crowd. Her mind, a quiet, whirring database of tics, micro-expressions, and deviations from the baseline. Her flight Globalis Air 881 to Amsterdam was her mission. Somewhere in this terminal, possibly in the first-class lounge just above her, was Julian Silas Petrovic. To the world, he was a charming import-export magnate. To the FBI, he was the suspected kingpin of the Ghost Network, a sophisticated human trafficking ring that preyed on vulnerable refugees in Eastern Europe and sold them into forced labor in the West. Evil's job was simple. Board Flight 881, sit in coach seat 24B and be the shadow. She was not to engage. She was simply to observe, to track his contacts, and to provide ground truth for the European authorities who were waiting to pick up the tail in Amsterdam. It was a delicate, quiet operation. The last thing she needed was a scene. At the podium for Gate C-27, Karen Miller was having the worst day of her career. Her supervisor had reprimanded her that morning for clocking in 3 minutes late. Her ex-husband had just texted her about a late alimony payment. And now, Flight 881 was over, booked by 12 passengers. 12. Karen, a thin woman in her late 40s, with a severe blonde bob and glasses perched on her nose, felt the familiar prickle of a migraine. She looked at the passenger manifest her eyes, scanning for the easy bumps. She looked for late check-ins, basic economy tickets, and though she would never admit it, names that sounded flexible. Then she looked up and saw Evelyn Reed. Evelyn had been sitting quietly for over an hour. She was in Karen's mind the perfect candidate. She was alone. She was flying coach. And she was a black woman. In Karen's soured, biased worldview, she was less likely to have status, less likely to be a high-powered lawyer or a CEO. She was, Karen assumed, someone who wouldn't put up a real fight. "We will now begin pre-boarding for Globalis Air Flight 881, Karen announced into the microphone, her voice tight and strained. "We will be welcoming our Diamond Medallion members, active duty military and families with small children." The usual shuffling began. Evelyn watched her eyes, tracking the flow. She hadn't seen Silas board yet, but that was normal. He'd be the last one on, slipping from the lounge to the first-class cabin with minimal fuss. After the first groups, Karen paused. "Ladies and gentlemen, this flight is currently oversold. We are offering an $800 travel voucher, a hotel room, and a confirmed seat on our 900 a.m. flight tomorrow for anyone willing to volunteer their seat." Silence. No one moved. Karen's eye twitched. $800 people going once. She sighed, frustrated. "Fine. We will have to begin involuntary denied boarding based on check-in time." She typed a few commands into her terminal. Then she picked up the microphone again. "Will passenger Evelyn Reed please come to the podium?" Evelyn Reed. Evelyn's head snapped up. Her heart didn't race. Instead, a cold, sharp spike of adrenaline pierced the calm. No, not now. She stood, slipped her book into her carry-on, and walked to the podium. She kept her expression neutral, projecting mild confusion. "Hi, I'm Evelyn Reed." "You called my name." Karen Miller didn't look up from her screen. "Yes, Miss Reed. Unfortunately, this flight is oversold, and we are going to have to rebook you on a flight tomorrow morning." She began typing furiously, already processing the denied boarding. "I'm afraid that's not possible," Evelyn said, her voice calm and low. Karen finally looked up, her eyes sharp with annoyance. "I beg your pardon. I understand the flight is overbooked." "Karen," Evelyn said, briefly glancing at the agent's name tag, "but I must be on this flight. It's an urgent business matter. I'm sure we can find another solution. Perhaps you can check for no shows in the first-class cabin." Karen bristled. The use of her first name, the calm refusal, it felt like a challenge. In her mind, Evelyn's request wasn't a request. It was attitude. "Ma'am, it's not a request," Karen said, her voice rising slightly. "I am telling you, we are bumping you. Your new flight leaves at $9,000. Here is your voucher packet." She slid the packet across the counter. Evelyn did not take it. "Karen, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I am not difficult and I am not arguing. I am informing you as a courtesy that my travel on this specific flight is non-negotiable. Please check my reservation again. There should be a do not bump flag attached to my booking code." This was a special designator used by government agencies for critical travel, but it was discreet. To Karen, it just looked like more entitlement. A flag. Karen let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Mum, I don't know what kind of status you think you have, but the only flag I see is yours holding up my entire boarding process. Now I need you to step aside. You are causing a disturbance." "I am not causing a disturbance." Evelyn repeated, her voice still perfectly level, though a cold dread was settling in her stomach. She could see the last of the first-class passengers boarding. A man in a tailored suit who wasn't Silas. Her target was still unaccounted for. "I am just trying to resolve this. Can you please call your supervisor?" "I am the supervisor for this gate," Karen snapped. A blatant lie. "And I am telling you to step away from my podium, or I will call security." This was the line, the threat. Evelyn sized her up. Karen was high stress, exhibiting classic confirmation bias. She wanted Evelyn to be a problem, so she was interpreting every calm word as aggression. Karen, Evelyn said one last time, "Calling security would be a profound mistake. I urge you to reconsider. Get your station manager now." For Karen, this was the final straw. The command, the unmitigated audacity. She picked up the phone. "This is Karen Miller at C-27. I have an unruly passenger, female, black, refusing to comply with boarding procedures. She's threatening me. I need assistance immediately." Evelyn Reed closed her eyes for just 1 second. She heard the words unruly, threatening. The script was being written, and she was being cast as the villain. Damn it, she thought. This entire operation is about to go up in smoke. The 30 seconds it took for security to arrive felt like an eternity. The line of remaining passengers watched a silent jury. Some looked annoyed, others embarrassed. A young man in a rumpled suit standing near the charging station quietly unholstered his phone and hit record. His name was Alex Stevens, a junior associate at a civil rights law firm, and he knew a developing situation when he saw one. M's mind was racing, not with panic, but with calculations. Option A. Identify myself now. Risk. Silas is in the lounge. He has a spotter. They see a gate agent talking to an FBI agent. They bolt. Mission compromised. Option B. Comply. Get bumped. Risk. Silas gets on that plane and disappears in Amsterdam. Mission failed. Option C. Hold my ground. Try to de-escalate security. Risk. Hi. They're coming in hot, thanks to Karen's report. She chose option C. 2 men in the dark blue uniforms of Trans Alliance Security, the airport's private contractor, stormed up to the gate. The lead officer, Mark Johnson, was a large, imposing man with a military-style flat top and a face that seemed permanently set in a scowl. His partner, David Chen, was younger, thinner, and visibly vibrating with nervous energy, clearly following his senior partner's lead. "This the one," Johnson barked at Karen, not even looking at Evelyn. "Yes, thank you, Officer," Karen said, flush with vindicated relief. "She's refusing to leave the podium. She won't accept her rebooking, and she's holding up the whole flight. She even threatened me." "I did not threaten you, Karen. I warned you." Evelyn stated, her voice cutting through the noise. She turned her body to face the officers, keeping her hands open and visible at her sides. "Officers, my name is Dr. Evelyn Reed. There has been a simple ticketing misunderstanding. The gate agent is refusing to call her supervisor, and I'm afraid she has Johnson cut her off, holding up a beefy hand. That's enough. We're not here to talk. You were given a lawful order by the airline agent to step aside. You refused. You're causing a scene. You need to come with us, Mum." "Come with you," where Evelyn asked, still calm. "I am a ticketed passenger, and I have done nothing wrong. You're done." "You hear me?" Johnson said, stepping into her personal space. This was classic intimidation, a tactic to overwhelm. "You're going to come to the detention office, and we're going to sort this out. And if you're lucky, you won't be charged with trespassing." "You cannot charge a ticketed passenger with trespassing in a public access area," Evelyn replied, her profiler brain kicking in. "Officer, you are escalating a customer service issue into a security incident. It's unnecessary." Johnson's face darkened. He hated barracks lawyers. He especially hated them from women who looked like Evelyn. In his small world, a black woman questioning his authority was the ultimate sign of disrespect. "You done talking?" he sneered. "I gave you a choice. Now I'm giving you an order. Move now." He reached out and grabbed her left arm, his fingers digging into her bicep. The moment his hand touched her, the entire equation changed. The adrenaline in Evelyn's system didn't just spike, it turned to ice. All her training, all her years of deep cover work, all the practiced calm, focused into a single unyielding point. "Get your hand off me," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was so cold and so sudden that it made Officer Chen flinch. To Johnson, this was it. This was resisting. "That's it. She's resisting." He yelled, partly to his partner, partly to the crowd of witnesses. "You're under arrest for battery on a security officer." "I haven't touched you," Evelyn said, appalled, as he grabbed her other arm. "Stop resisting!" Chen panicked, now grabbed her bag. "Don't touch my bag," Evelyn commanded, pulling back. Inside that bag was her government-issued laptop and her service weapon. That was all Johnson needed. "She's going for a weapon," he screamed. It was pure manufactured hysteria. He spun her around, yanking her arms behind her back with a painful wrench. Evelyn, caught off balance, stumbled and fell to her knees. Her bag hit the floor, spilling its contents. A book, a water bottle, a tube of lip balm, and a small black case containing her handcuffs. The sight of the cuffs sent Johnson into a rage. "Look, she's got cuffs. She's one of those sovereign citizen weirdos." "Mark, just cuff her," Chen pleaded, his eyes wide with panic. "I am not resisting," Evelyn said, her voice strained as Johnson twisted her arm. "You are assaulting me. I am a federal. Shut up, shut up." Johnson bellowed, his face red. He was losing control, and Alex Stevens's phone was capturing every second of it. He couldn't get her cuffed on her knees. Frustrated and enraged, he did the unthinkable. He grabbed the back of her blazer and began to drag her. A collective gasp went up from the terminal. Passengers scattered. Evelyn was dragged several feet across the polished floor, the rough fabric of her blazer riding up her back. It was the deepest, most profound humiliation of her life. She wasn't just an agent. She was a spectacle. A black woman being dragged through an airport by an angry white security guard, a scene as old and ugly as time itself. "Stop this!" Alex Stevens yelled from the side. "You're hurting her. She's not resisting. Get back, or you're next." Johnson snarled, breathing heavily. They had dragged her about 10 FT into the center of the main concourse when Evelyn stopped trying to reason and started using her authority. She planted her loafers on the floor, using her core strength to create a dead weight. Johnson pulled, but she held firm. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice now devoid of all emotion. It was flat, hard, and terrifying. "I told you to shut." Johnson began yanking on her arm again. "Mark, stop!" Chen suddenly yelled, his face pale. "Mark, look at her bag." Johnson, annoyed, glanced back. Evelyn's jacket had been pulled open in the struggle. Pinned to the waistband of her jeans, now visible to the world, was a concealed carry holster, and inside it, clearly visible, was the unmistakable grip of a government-issue Glock. But that wasn't what Chen was looking at. He was looking at the leather wallet that had fallen from her jacket's inner pocket. It lay open on the floor. On one side was a photo ID, Dr. Evelyn Reed, U.S. Department of Justice. On the other side was a heavy, shining gold-plated badge, Special Agent, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The silence that fell over Gate C-27 was absolute. It was heavier and more profound than any noise. The terminal's ambient hum seemed to vanish. The final boarding call announcement for a flight to Dallas died in the air. Mark Johnson froze. His hand was still clamped on Evelyn's bicep. His brain, slow and thick with adrenaline, tried to process the two objects on the floor, the ID and the badge. Federal Bureau of Investigation. He let go of Evelyn's arm as if it were on fire. He stumbled back a step, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. Officer Chen looked like he was going to be sick. He dropped her bag and held his hands up as if he were the one being arrested. "Oh God. Oh my God. Mark. Mark." Karen Miller, who had been watching from the podium with a smug look of triumph, felt the blood drain from her face. Her vision tunneled. The severe blonde bob seemed to wilt. FBI. No, it's a fake. It has to be a fake. Evelyn Reed rose to her feet in one smooth, practiced motion. She did not yell. She did not cry. Her face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. She adjusted her blazer, her eyes never leaving Mark Johnson. She took 2 steps bent down and retrieved her wallet. She didn't pocket it. She held it up open for Johnson to see clearly. Officer Mark Johnson. Officer David Chen. She said, her voice resonating in the dead quiet. "You have just assaulted a federal officer. You have interfered with a federal investigation. And you," she turned her head, her gaze locking on Karen Miller, "have acted as an accessory." Karen began to tremble, her hand flying to her mouth. I didn't know." She was unruly. "I was calm," Evelyn corrected, taking a step toward the podium. Karen flinched as if she'd been struck. "I was rational, and you, based on nothing but your own prejudice, decided I was a threat. You lied to these officers. You told them I threatened you. You created this entire incident." "Mom, Dr. Reed, Agent," Johnson stammered, his tough guy act disintegrating into a puddle of panic. You didn't identify yourself." "Identify. We were just following procedure. Your procedure is to drag a non-combative passenger across the floor," Evelyn shot back. "Your procedure is to scream weapon when a woman is trying to protect her property. You didn't ask me to identify myself. You assaulted me." She pulled out her phone. She didn't dial 911. She dialed a number from memory. "This is Special Agent Reed. I have a 1036 officer initiated at Hudson Walker International Terminal C Gate C-27. I am invoking federal jurisdiction. I need airport police. I need the FBI Washington Field Office liaison. And I need you to contact Assistant Director Thorne now." She snapped the phone shut and looked at the 3 of them. "You will not move. You will not speak. You will give your identification to the actual police when they arrive. Your lives, as you know them, are over." Alex Stevens, still recording, slowly lowered his phone, his jaw on the floor. He had just captured the single most catastrophic HR failure in aviation history. From the first-class lounge above, a man in an Armani suit watched the scene through a pair of discreet, high-powered binoculars. He had been enjoying the show, the provincial security guards harassing a black woman. It had been amusing. Then he saw the badge. He saw the cold authority. He zoomed in on Evelyn's face. He didn't recognize her, but he recognized the type. This wasn't a scene. It was a sting. Julian Silas Petrovich calmly placed his binoculars back in his leather carry-on. He looked at his watch. Flight 881 was now irrelevant. He picked up his glass of champagne, took one last sip and stood. He walked calmly, not to the jet bridge, but back out of the lounge toward the terminal's international transit exit. The shadow was compromised. The operation was blown, and in the chaos, the ghost was gone. It took less than 3 minutes for the first real police to arrive. These weren't Trans-Alliance contractors. This was the Port Authority Police Department, their faces grim, their hands resting on their service weapons. They were followed almost immediately by 2 men in suits who had the unmistakable bearing of federal agents. The scene they found was surreal. A terminal full of passengers all filming on their phones. 2 cowering security guards. A gate agent who looked like she was hyperventilating. And in the center of it all, a calm, composed black woman holding an FBI badge. "Agent Reed," one of the suits said, flashing his own credentials. "Special Agent Davis, WFO." "Agent Davis." Evelyn nodded, her voice tight. "Thank you for the prompt response. I need these 3 individuals detained immediately." She pointed to Karen, Mark, and David. Their names are Karen Miller, an employee of Globalis Air, Mark Johnson and David Chen, employees of Trans-Alliance Security. Detained for what Mark Johnson sputtered, finding a last pathetic scrap of defiance. "We're the victims here. She had a gun." The PAPD officer, a stern-faced captain named Rodriguez, looked at Johnson with pure contempt. "She's FBI, you idiot. She's supposed to have a gun. You, on the other hand, are supposed to have a brain. Shut up. Put your hands behind your back." As the officers cuffed Johnson and Chen, the reality of the situation crashed down on them. These weren't the plastic zip ties they used on unruly passengers. These were steel. "You're making a mistake," Johnson yelled as he was led away. "I'm a security officer." "Not anymore, you're not," Rodriguez muttered. While her colleagues were being cuffed, Karen Miller simply collapsed. She slid down the wall of the podium and sat on the floor sobbing hysterically. "I'll lose my job. I'll lose my pension. I didn't mean it. I didn't know." Evelyn watched her, not with pity, but with a cold, analytical detachment. This was not the time for emotion. This was the time for procedure. A new figure came sprinting down the concourse, his tie flying over his shoulder. This was Robert Vance, the airport operations manager. He was a man paid 6 figures to prevent exactly this kind of public relations disaster. "What in God's name is happening at my gate?" He bellowed, his face purple. Who are you?" he demanded, looking at Evelyn. Evelyn just held up the badge. Vance stopped dead. His face went from purple to ghost white in half a second. "Oh no, no. Miss Jenkins, get down here." He yelled into his walkie-talkie, summoning the Globalis Air Regional Manager. "Mr. Vance," Evelyn said, "this gate is now a federal crime scene." A crime scene," Vance stammered. "For what?" "A simple dispute." "For starters," Evelyn said, ticking points off on her fingers. "Assault on a federal officer. Interference with a federal investigation. Unlawful detainment. Conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of authority." "Shall I continue?" Robert Vance looked like he was going to faint. Sarah Jenkins, the Globalis Air Manager, arrived. She was a polished professional woman in a crisp red suit, but the look on her face was one of pure terror. She had already seen the videos starting to circulate on social media. "Agent Reed," she began, her voice shaking. "I am Sarah Jenkins, Regional Manager for Globalis. On behalf of our airline, I cannot begin to apologize." "Save it." Evelyn cut her off. "Your apology is useless. Your employee," she gestured to the sobbing Karen, "just cost the United States government a high-priority target. While your staff was dragging me across the floor, a man suspected of trafficking dozens of women and children slipped out of this airport." The weight of that statement settled over the gate. The PAPD officers stopped. The federal agents looked at Evelyn with newfound understanding. This wasn't just about an agent being assaulted. This was about a catastrophic operational failure. "He's gone," Agent Davies asked, his voice low. "He was in the first-class lounge." Evelyn said, her voice cracking for the first time with raw frustration. "He saw the commotion. He saw the badge. He walked." Because your gate agent couldn't handle a black woman asking a question. Because your security guards thought public humiliation was a valid de-escalation technique. Sarah Jenkins and Robert Vance were speechless. There was no corporate script for this. This was a black swan event, a total system failure initiated by a single prejudiced employee. What do you need?" Sarah finally whispered, her career flashing before her eyes. "I need every frame of security footage from this terminal for the last 2 hours," Evelyn commanded. "I need the passenger manifest for Flight 881. I need the employee files for Miller, Johnson and Chen. I need a list of every passenger who was at this gate." She then turned to Alex Stevens, who was still standing by his phone in his hand. "And you, sir? I need your phone." Alex nodded, his eyes wide. "Of course, Agent. I'm Alex Stevens. I'm a lawyer. I filmed everything, the whole thing. From the moment she called you unruly." Evelyn gave him a grim, appreciative nod. "Mr. Stevens, you may have just become the government's star witness." As the PAPD led the 3 disgraced employees away, Evelyn finally took a breath. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the bone-deep ache of the assault, and the bitter, acidic taste of a mission failed. She had protected her cover until it was too late. And now Julian Silas Petrovich was in the wind, and it was all because Karen Miller couldn't see past the color of her skin. The rest of that evening was a blur of sterile rooms and clipped professional conversations. Evelyn was taken to the FBI's Hudson Walker Satellite Office, a bland, windowless facility deep within the airport's infrastructure. She sat in a conference room, a cup of lukewarm coffee untouched in front of her, as she gave her official statement to Agent Davies and a stone-faced attorney from the DOJ's Civil Rights Division. And at that point, Evelyn recounted, her voice a monotone. Officer Johnson shouted, "She's going for a weapon!" and proceeded to drag me from the podium area into the main concourse. Across the table, Assistant Director Thorne, her boss, watched her via a secure video link from Washington, D.C. Thorne was a formidable man, one of the highest-ranking black men in the Bureau, and he had been Evelyn's mentor for 15 years. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were hard. "The asset Silas is confirmed in the wind," Thorne said, his deep voice filling the room. He bypassed customs in the transit corridor using a forged diplomatic passport from a non-extradition country. He's on a private charter that just left Tetro. "We've lost him, Evie." Evelyn closed her eyes. He saw the badge. "Sir, the commotion drew his attention and my credentials blew the op. This is on me. I should have identified myself sooner, or I should have just taken the voucher." "Negative, Agent Reed," Thorne said instantly. "You identified yourself at the precise moment you were under physical illegal assault. You maintained cover protocol up to and beyond reasonable expectation. The failure here is not yours. The failure belongs to Globalis Air Trans Alliance Security and an airport authority that allows undertrained, prejudiced contractors to assault passengers. Sir, that doesn't get Silas back." Evelyn said, the frustration evident. "The files we had on him, the victims, will get him." Thorne said, a promise in his voice. "He made a mistake by running. He confirmed our suspicions. He's exposed. We'll get him. Your job now is to focus on this. The director is apoplectic. The video Mr. Stevens shot is now in our possession. It is damning." He paused, and for a second, the boss was gone and her mentor was there. "Are you all right, Evelyn?" She looked down at her hands. Her blazer was torn at the shoulder. Her bicep was already a riot of purple and blue. "I'm angry," she said honestly. "I've been undercover in meth labs. I've negotiated with serial killers. I've never felt humiliation like that. They dragged me like I wasn't human." "I know," Thorne said, his voice quiet. "And that is why we are going to burn them to the ground legally, professionally, systemically. The door to the conference room opened and Agent Davies came back in. "Mom, we have the preliminary interviews from the big three." Evelyn sat up, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Go." Karen Miller Davies said, reading from his notes. "Complete meltdown. She's confessed to everything. She admitted the flight wasn't technically full. It was just overbooked and she was trying to clear standbys. She admitted she targeted you because you were alone, and she assumed you wouldn't be a problem. She admitted she lied about the threat to get security to respond faster. She's a total wreck. She's been fired. Obviously, Mark Johnson," Davis continued, "is going the other way. He's belligerent. He's claiming we are the ones in the wrong. He's quoted as saying, 'How was I supposed to know she was a Fed? She looked like, well, just another one.' He's lawyered up, but his own partner is contradicting him." David Chen Evelyn asked. Chen has flipped. He's given a full statement against Johnson. He claims Johnson has a history of roughing up minority passengers and that he was egged on by Karen Miller's unruly and threatening report. He's terrified. He's hoping to cut a deal. Evelyn nodded slowly. The classic power dynamic: the instigator, the aggressor, and the weak-willed accomplice. "And the corporations?" Thorne asked over the speaker. "Panic," Davis said simply. "Absolute hair-on-fire panic. The CEO of Globalis Air, Mr. James Harrison, is flying in from London overnight. The CEO of Transalliance Security is already here in this building begging for a meeting. The video Alex Stevens posted to his private social media, which he took down at our request, was copied. It's on Twitter. It has over 1 million views." Evelyn leaned back. It was out. The humiliation was now public. "Good." Thorne's voice boomed. "Let them panic. This isn't a PR problem they can manage. This is a cancer." "And Dr. Reed," he said, his voice locking back onto her, "is the surgeon who's going to cut it out." "What's the play, sir?" Evelyn asked. "The play," Thorne said, "is hard karma. The criminal charges are straightforward. Assault on a federal officer, conspiracy interference. The DOJ is handling that. The civil side, that's where we come in. Globalis Air and Transalliance have billions in government contracts. TSA, Homeland Security, Department of Defense. They just proved they are a systemic liability." Evelyn suddenly understood this wasn't about revenge. It was about leverage. "They're going to want this to go away," Evelyn said, her mind seeing the chessboard. "They're going to offer me millions a settlement, a non-disclosure agreement." "Exactly," Thorne said. "And you, Agent Reed, are going to tell them you don't want their money." A slow, cold smile spread across Evelyn's face. "What do I want, sir?" "You want to fix their entire broken system," Thorne replied. "You want their training programs. You want their hiring practices. You want their souls. You're going to write the Dr. Evelyn Reed protocol on Antibius and de-escalation, and they are going to adopt it nationwide. Or we will see them in federal court and personally strip them of every government contract they have. This was the real karma. It wasn't just about 3 people losing their jobs. It was about changing the entire culture that allowed them to be employed in the first place. "Tell them I'm ready for the meeting," Evelyn said. The next 72 hours were a masterclass in corporate graveling. The boardroom at the Hudson Walker Executive Tower, normally a place of smug self-congratulation, felt like a funeral home. Evelyn sat at the head of the table. She was flanked by Assistant Director Thorne and a team of DOJ lawyers. She was no longer in her undercover jeans. She was in her full uniform, a razor-sharp black pantsuit, a crisp white shirt, and her badge and credentials clipped to her belt, visible to everyone. Across from her sat the CEO's James Harrison of Globalis Air, a man who looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. His bespoke suit rumpled, and Michael Corrian, the CEO of Transalliance Security, a former cop whose entire tough-on-crime persona had evaporated. With them was a phalanx of the most expensive lawyers in New York. Agent Reed, Dr. Reed Harrison began his voice. "I have watched the video. There are no words. Apology is insufficient. What you experienced, what our employee Karen Miller did, it's indefensible. It's a disgrace." Corrian chimed in, eager to agree. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Chen have been terminated. Of course, their actions are not reflective of our company's values. Thorne cut him off. Save the talking points, Mr. Corrigan. Your values are precisely what's on trial here. Your value appears to be hiring bullies with a bias problem and giving them a badge. Mark Johnson has 3 excessive force complaints in the last year, one of the DOJ lawyers said, sliding a file across the table. All from minority passengers. All of them were dismissed by your internal review board. You didn't hire a problem, Mr. Corrigan. You protected one. Corrigan's face went white. And you, Mr. Harrison? The lawyer continued, turning to the Globalis CEO. Karen Miller for formal customer service complaints filed against her, all describing her as hostile and aggressive, specifically toward non-white customers. Her personnel file is a tapestry of red flags that your HR department chose to ignore. James Harrison sank in his chair. They had been found out. The internal rot was being exposed. We are prepared to offer Agent Reed a substantial settlement, Harrison said, playing his only card. A 7-figure sum to be paid to her personally or to a charity of her choice. In return, a full and final NDA. Evelyn held up a hand. The entire room went silent. Mr. Harrison, she said, her voice quiet, but carrying the weight of the entire federal government. Do you have any idea what your employee cost my department? The man I was tracking, Julian Petrovich, is responsible for the disappearance of at least 50 women. We had him. We were this close. She leaned forward, and your gate agent, in a fit of pique, threw a grenade into the middle of a multi-year, multi-agency operation. So you can take your 7-figure sum and your NDA, and you can file them away. Then what do you want? Harrison whispered. I don't want anything. Evelyn said, I am demanding. She slid a thick-bound document across the table. On the cover it read, The Reed Protocol, a framework for amphibious de-escalation and cultural competency in public F-facing service. This, Evelyn said, is your new corporate Bible. This is what you're going to implement. Not just in Hudson Walker, in every airport you service worldwide. Harrison and Corrigan stared at the document as if it were a bomb. This is a complete overhaul of our training, Corrigan stammered, flipping through the pages. Mandatory implicit bias, screening psychological vetting for all security personnel, scenario-based de-escalation training, a zero-tolerance policy for racial profiling. You want us to fund this? Harrison asked aghast. The cost. It would be hundreds of millions of dollars. That's correct, Thorne said, leaning back with a grim smile. Consider it a long overdue investment. Or we can proceed with the DOJ's lawsuit, which will not only seek billions in damages, but will also petition for the immediate suspension of all your federal contracts. TSA, DoD, Homeland Security, all of it. It was a kill shot. Trans-Alliance Security's stock would cease to exist. Globalist Air would lose the lucrative military transport contracts that propped up its entire financial structure. Harrison looked at Corrigan. They were trapped utterly and completely. This protocol, Evelyn said, will be monitored by us. You will submit to quarterly audits. Your hiring and firing practices will be reviewed by a federally appointed oversight board. And I, she added, will personally lead the first training seminar for your executive teams so that you can understand from the ground up how you failed. James Harrison, CEO of a $30 billion airline, slowly picked up a pen. He looked at the signature line on the agreement. You have 24 hours, Evelyn said, standing up. Gentlemen, she and her team walked out of the room, leaving the smell of sulfur brimstone and corporate collapse in their wake. The fallout for the 3 individuals was not corporate or systemic. It was personal, brutal, and swift. For Karen Miller. Karen was fired for causa designation that instantly vaporized her 25-year pension. Globalis Air, in its desperate attempt to show the DOJ it was cleaning house, threw her to the wolves. She was named as a co-defendant in the civil suit. She and her husband had to sell their house to pay the legal fees. Her husband, a man who valued image above all, left her 6 weeks later, disgusted by the public shame. We see Karen a year later. Her severe blonde bob has grown out streaked with grey. She is sitting in the fluorescent-lit waiting room of a temp agency. So, Ms. Miller, the interviewer, a kind-faced man named Ben, says, looking at her resume, there's a gap in a flag on your background check. It says you were terminated from Globalis Air pending a federal investigation. Karen's face crumpled. It was a misunderstanding. I just had a bad day, Karen Ben said gently. The video has 300 million views. You're the airport, Karen. No airline will hire you. No customer-facing job is going to take this risk. She began to cry. Quiet, pathetic sobs. I have nothing. My husband left me. I'm applying for food stamps. I'm sorry, Ben said, and he truly was. I might be able to get you a night shift data entry job. It's minimum wage, no benefits, and you'd be in a back room, no contact with the public. Karen Miller, the woman who once held the power to deny people travel to summon armed men with a phone call, nodded. I'll take it, she whispered. Her karma wasn't just losing her job. It was losing her power, her identity, and her social standing, all in a public firestorm of her own making. For Mark Johnson, Mark's bravado lasted until his first hearing. His partner David Chen testified against him, detailing a pattern of aggressive behavior and racial bias. The video played on a massive screen in the courtroom was damning. His own words, "She looks like, just another one," were read into the record. He was charged with multiple crimes, but the most serious was assault on a federal officer. His union dropped him. His lawyer advised him to plead guilty. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Esther Williams, looked down at him with profound disappointment. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice echoing in the silent court, "you were given a position of trust. You were armed and given authority, and you used that authority to bully, to humiliate, and to assault a woman based on the color of her skin. The fact that this woman turned out to be a federal agent is in many ways an act of providence. Because if she had been anyone else, a nurse, a teacher, a mother, she would have had no recourse. You would have ruined her day, perhaps her life, and you would have gone on to your next shift. Your assault was not just on Dr. Reed. It was on the public's trust. He was sentenced to 36 months in a federal minimum security prison. His security license was revoked for life. We see him 6 months into his sentence. He's in a drab prison uniform mopping a hallway. His wife had filed for divorce. His kids refused to see him. He was just another number stripped of the uniform and the power he had so viciously abused. For David Chen. Chen, for his cooperation, received a different kind of fate. He avoided jail time. He was given 5 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and was, of course, fired and blacklisted from the security industry. His karma was a life of quiet paranoia. He couldn't get a job at a gas station. The moment his background check came back, he was toxic. He lived in constant fear, looking over his shoulder, forever known as the other guard in the video. He was the coward, the accomplice who stood by and let it happen. His shame was his prison. 1 year later, the Hudson Walker Airport was unrecognizable, not in its structure, but in its atmosphere. The dark blue uniforms of Trans-Alliance Security were gone, replaced by the crisp grey and white service uniforms of Aegis National. The new name Trans-Alliance was forced to adopt for its government contracts a cosmetic change, but one that came with a complete non-negotiable operational overhaul. 5 miles from the airport, in a sleek glass and steel building that was once a regional Globalis Air Operations hub, Dr. Evelyn Reed stood on a stage. The sign on the wall behind her was simple, stark, and official. The Reed Protocol National De-Escalation and Bias Awareness Training Center. The facility was her design, funded entirely by the 9F-figure settlement the two corporations had been forced to pay. It was part classroom, part psychological operations center. Evelyn was addressing the first graduating class of the new executive-level trainees, a group of 200 airline station managers, security supervisors, and HR directors flown in from across the country. They were the ones who would be responsible for implementing her protocol. And they were all watching a video on the massive 4K screen. They saw it all. They saw Karen Miller's pinched, annoyed face. They heard her lies to security. They saw the arrival of Mark Johnson, his chest puffed out, radiating aggression. They saw the confusion, the grab, the struggle. And then they saw the drag. A wave of audible discomfort rolled through the room. People winced, cringed, and shook their heads. This wasn't some abstract training video. This was raw, humiliating, and real. Evelyn picked up the remote and paused the video on the most damning frame. Her on her knees being hauled across the floor by a man snarling with rage. This, Evelyn said, her voice calm and amplified by the microphone, is what a systemic failure looks like. This is not the result of one bad apple. Bad apples, as it turns out, are grown in rotten orchards. She walked to the edge of the stage, her gaze sweeping the room. This incident began with the implicit bias of a gate agent. She said, her voice a scalpel. Miss Miller saw a black woman traveling alone in coach and made an assumption. She assumed I was powerless. She assumed I was less than. When I didn't conform to her stereotype, she didn't see a customer to be helped. She saw a problem to be crushed. She clicked to the next slide, a picture of Mark Johnson. This, she continued, is a fragile ego armed with a badge. Officer Johnson's authority was questioned. He didn't have the tools, the training, or the temperament to de-escalate. So he escalated. He used the only tool he had: violence. He lied about a threat. He lied about resistance. All to justify what he wanted to do, which was to dominate a situation he couldn't control intellectually. She paced her eyes, locking with a man in the front row, a security chief from Chicago. The Reed Protocol is not about sensitivity training. It is not about making you feel good. It is about behavioral science. It is about interrupting the cognitive link between bias and action. It is about giving you and your people the tools to see a human being, not a stereotype, and to de-escalate before a customer service issue becomes a federal crime. For the next 4 hours, she drilled them. She ran them through grueling, realistic scenarios on the sense simulation floor. Your scenario? She called out to one group. A man is shouting at a gate agent in a language you don't understand. A passenger next to him says he just said he has a bomb. What do? A young manager blurted. I tackled the man. Wrong. Evelyn's voice cut through the air. You've just created a stampede and tackled a man who may have been saying, I am looking for the bomb-sniffing dogs. I lost my bag. You failed to isolate. You failed to verify. You failed to listen. You let one passenger's panic become your panic. You start over. They were exhausted by the end, but they were learning. As the session broke, a young woman in a new Globalis Air uniform approached Evelyn clutching a notebook. Dr. Reed, I'm Chloe Williams. I'm the new assistant station manager for Terminal B, M. Williams. Evelyn nodded. I just wanted to thank you. Chloe said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm from a neighborhood where we get followed in stores, where we get randomly selected at TSA every single time. When I saw that video of you, it made me sick. But then I heard about what you did. That you didn't just take the money. You took the system. She took a deep breath. I applied for this job because I knew the Reed Protocol was being implemented. You made this a place I felt I could work. You made it safer for me as an employee and for people who look like us. So thank you. Evelyn looked at the young woman, and for a moment, her agent mask softened. The protocol is just a set of rules, Miss Williams. It's people like you in positions of authority who will make it a culture. Don't thank me. Just do the work. Be better than they were. Yes. Mom Chloe said, her shoulders set with new determination. Evelyn returned to her temporary office to pack. She was flying back to Washington. On her desk, next to her travel-ready laptop, was a small framed newspaper clipping from the Prague Post. The headline, dated 6 months prior, read, International Trafficking Kingpin Silas Arrested in Daring Raid. She smiled. It was the call she would never forget. She had been at her desk in Quantico, neck deep in the financial data Silas had left behind. Her secure line buzzed. It was Thorne. Evie, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. We got him. How he got sloppy, Thorne said. He ran from Hudson Walker fast and loose. He thought we were onto him. He thought you were there for him. His panic move was to use a financial account he thought was clean to buy his way out of the country. It was an account that you had flagged 2 months ago. Evelyn's breath had hitched. That's right, Thorne said. Your failure at the airport, the humiliation. It was the single greatest psychological operations victory we could have asked for. It made him run, and he ran right into the trap you'd already set. The Ghost network is done. The European task force has already recovered 27 victims. He's talking. He's giving up everyone. Well done, Agent. The karma, it turned out, was deeper and more complex than she could have imagined. Karen Miller's bigotry and Mike Johnson's rage hadn't just destroyed their own lives. In their blind stupidity, they had created the exact chaotic event that flushed their true target out of hiding. Evelyn Reed packed the clipping into her briefcase, her service weapon right beside it. She walked out of the training center and into the bright afternoon sun of Hudson Walker International Terminal C. It was the same place, but everything was different. The Aegis guards were professional, alert, and courteous. She walked to gate C27. The gate was now automated. She scanned her boarding pass, and the light flashed green. The agent, a man she recognized from one of her training seminars, looked up, saw her face, and gave her a crisp, respectful nod. Welcome, Dr. Reed. You're all set. Have a wonderful flight. Thank you, Michael, she said, using his name. She walked down the jet bridge, a place that had once been the start of a failed mission. The system wasn't perfect. It never would be. But as she took her seat 24B, the same one she was supposed to have a year ago, she looked out the window. The system was better, and it was better because she had forced it to be. That, she thought, was the hardest and most profound karma of all. The badge brought the truth to light, but the real victory wasn't the arrest. It was the change. Dr. Evelyn Reed's story is a powerful, real-life reminder that prejudice and abuse of power, no matter how small, can have catastrophic consequences. And that hard karma isn't always about revenge. It's about accountability. The actions of one biased gate agent and 2 aggressive guards didn't just ruin their own lives. They inadvertently caused a systemic revolution in airline safety and amphibious training that is still used today. They set out to humiliate a woman, and in doing so, they gave her the power to change their entire industry. If this story of justice, power, and the ultimate karmic twist resonated with you, please show your support. These are the real-life stories we love to tell. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We have so many more stories of karma and justice coming your way, and you don't want to miss a single one. Thank you for listening.